all current affairs. Freshly pressed. Smooth 98.1.
Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. I'm Ayo Myro Essay. Time for Freshly Pressed 981. This is where we bring you detailed analysis of today's national news headline stories. And to join me to analyze our stories, I have Devo Okorie. Good morning, Devo.
Good morning, Lagos. Morning, AY. Eku and SARS. Eku and Rampage. Eku and bad governance.
All right. Thank you very much, Devo. Time check. It's 7:31 a.m. Wednesday, 28th October 2020. And we are going into our stories for today. The first one is from this day newspaper. But this is how you can also join the conversation if you'd like to send in your message, tweets, or comments. We are streaming live on YouTube as well, so you can watch us. YouTube is Smooth 981 FM Lagos. We are on there. You can find us. On WhatsApp, it's 0809 444 Twitter, Smooth981FM, but please use the hashtag freshly pressed 981 so I can easily track your message. Despite Sanwo-Olu's denial, Army insists Lagos government requested troops deployment. A week after it triggered a global outrage over its alleged shooting of the NSAS protesters in Lagos, the Nigerian army yesterday broke its silence on the incident, denying that it fired at the marchers. The summary of this is that there was an official statement from the Nigerian army, and what they mentioned was that, and the statement was signed off by the Army Public Relations Acting Deputy Director, 81 Division, Major Oshoba Olaniyi. He, in this statement, tried to provide clarification as to the role of the army at the incident on the 20th of October, yesterday marking exactly 1 week when allegedly militia officials shot at protesters, killing a few people. Now, this statement, instead of laying to rest a number of questions, Devo, seems to bring up even more questions, more areas that need further clarification. Please take us to the story.
Well, it's no surprise to anyone the contentions and the conspiracies that have come about with the incidences of the last 1 week and 1 day. It's exactly 8 days from October 10th, 2020, as some regard as 2010-20, where the sordid tragedy took place. Um, we were all here, those who were there present and those who watched or heard as to the shootings that took a south on the NSAS protest at the Lekki toll gates, of which sparked off nationwide outrage, which was characterized by hoodlums, looting, um, rampage on government properties and personal properties as well as the discovery and looting of most of the COVID-19 warehouses nationwide. Now, um, but in all this, there are questions that have been raised as to what led to this, how did we get here? And this story speaks to how, because while some had termed what happened last Tuesday as the Lekki massacre, there have been denials and rebuttals from both government and the military as to the role they played or didn't play. Now, as of yesterday, the Army, through its acting director, deputy director, 81 Division, Army Public Relations Major Shoba Alani, did come out with a statement that one, that they denied firing at the protesters, as well as they debunked the governor's claim on a CNN. It's believed that they were reacting to that on a CNN interview that he knew nothing about the troop developments. All right. Now, you see, where does that leave us? It's just an ongoing tale of denials and wrong assertions. Why do we say this? Because government's first position on this, if you remember, which was also contained in the army's response, was that he had claimed that there were forces beyond their control.
Yeah.
That was the government's, Lagos State government's first position.
That's the first response.
And then the army's first position was also that they were not there.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Two, they had labeled all the publications and the videos as fake news. That was their first position. Now, even if you take that to be their first position, as more information was being unraveled, the government did say that they would set up a judicial panel to look into and unravel what really happened in that matter. Now, it so happened that the governor was taken up in an interview on CNN, and that's where many people said more information was
Before
revealed.
CNN, he had actually spoken with a news channel here in Nigeria, but
Yes.
Further.
No, it was the same position that, and I'm coming to the part that the army also did speak and say that there was nothing like deaths or massacre.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
That was their first position. Remember, the government's first position on the deaths was that there were no deaths, and then after visitation of some of the hospitals, they now said, well, there were two.
One, then later two.
Yes.
He said one. And
so this change in position, of which the army and also in some other statements did say that, well, the bodies that were carried and the injured were taken to the Bonny Clinic, which is within their cantonment. And I think they're still trying to arrive at those who are alive and those who are dead.
Sorry, let me read a direct quote from an initial statement made by the army. It said in a statement titled "Alleged Massacre of Protesters at Lekki Toll Plaza," it says the attention of Headquarters 81 Division Nigerian Army has been drawn to a viral video on social media in which was alleged that civilian protesters were massacred by soldiers at Lekki Toll Plaza. This allegation is untrue, unfounded, and aimed at causing anarchy in the country. At no time did soldiers of the Nigerian army open fire on any civilian. So it is important. I just want to get that direct quote, because when it comes to defending or taking or removing themselves from certain statements, we must remember their stance. Because I do expect to get a response from the Lagos State government, since the army has come out to release a statement to say that they were invited by the Lagos State government.
Yes, now that's the final position here, which is was stated in the deputy director's statement, that it's not true that the governor did not know about their deployments, that they were actually invited by the Lagos State government to address the inorderly those who had taken advantage of the NSARS protest and were breaking the curfew. And that the army has protocols and that they would always carry out their duties in line with laid out laws and principles. You see, there's so much being said, okay? And the truth is, it's painful that we have gotten to this position. There are two things that we need to take note of here. One, the facts literally are laid bare in front of us by the different positions that these two players have been taking. It only shows culpability. And why I say this is because what is at stake here, all right, is their inability of any of the, and I want to use this word so that people understand, any of the constituted authorities in taking responsibility for what happened. Because when you begin to ask questions, the first day, both the army and the government said, I'm not aware, I'm not aware. So did people come from space to, in those shootings? And if, okay, fine, let's take it that the army was not there. So who was there? Both, it still indicts the two of them. The government, so are you saying that Lagos was invaded? That terrorists came from outside and went to shoot people at Lekki? It indicts both the government and indicts also the military. Now, further, with more information, we start to see that there was some knowledge of what happened. The governor did mention in one instance that he doesn't know where it went wrong, that they were meant to come in by 10. There must have been some kind of miscommunication. However, even if there was miscommunication and the military came in ahead of time, another stark question that is being raised is, yes, there were protesters. They broke the curfew. Instead of going home, they stayed put at the Lekki toll gate. Now, the question is this: is the punishment for breaking curfew death or to be shot at? Whilst you say there were no shootings, where did the bullets come from? Okay, there were blank bullets, but they still injured and maimed many of the protesters. I mean, it's just incredible how, up till now, we haven't heard anyone among the constituted authorities take responsibility. And why I say this is the greatest loss in this is because there's a connection between the incidents that happened with the protesters and what triggered off the next morning as rampage and mass destruction around town, of which hoodlums, etc., took advantage of. We're not sanctioning
looting,
looting. We're not sanctioning arsonists, etc., and co. But you cannot, in fair judgment, disassociate what happened within those nights. Now, remember, and people tend to forget, because some people say, why did they call the curfew? As of that Tuesday in the morning, what we saw in Lagos State was that generally, apart from the protests that were taking place in some known areas, hoodlums started blocking various roads around the city. In some cases, they were attacking and confronting the police. There were videos to show that, and where the Orile station got burnt, even though that came out from a fracas between some of their officers.
We have a story on
Yeah,
Orile and Fagba.
so that, no, not the Fagba issue. The Fagba happened after.
Yeah.
But what led to the curfew being called? So it obviously, and Lagosians couldn't go to work. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So it obviously was looking like, oh, the peaceful process was being infiltrated. So government had to make moves to be able to stop that.
I know. I mean, Diva, I did expect this was going to happen because there's so many issues around this particular headline. So I can understand why we would want to, because even with all we've talked about, there's still many questions around this. There's still many things to discuss. I mean, Chris has set the record. He says the protesters didn't break the curfew. Don't forget that curfew was moved to start at 9 p.m. So even with that,
that's what I'm saying. Even if the army didn't get the information on time, on getting to the Lekki Tollgate arena, the consequence of breaking a curfew is not to be shot.
All right.
Now, Prince, that does not show that proper rules of engagement were carried out. Now remember, and like I said, the facts are laid bare. Right in this same country, in Abuja, protesters were fired with water hydrants as well as tear gas. Those are instruments of minimal engagement or minimum force used as tactics to disperse crowds. So it's not like we don't know what could have been done. I'm sure if those were the actions taken, we wouldn't be at this position right now.
Absolutely. Prince says, did inviting the army to maintain law and order mean invitation to kill? The army have questions to answer.
And also, the last point, like I said, which is the biggest, is a betrayal of trust that the people grant their governments. Remember, it's a democracy. It's not a dictatorship. It's the people that grant the power and the authority to a few certain individuals to govern them. All right? And it comes with enormous responsibilities, which is why most times you don't question what they do. But when you give us cause as a people to doubt you, to question your integrity, it leads to a break in law and order. It leads to a betrayal. It quickly erodes the trust that people have. And remember, the governor had, and in several locations nationwide, some governors had met with the protesters.
Yes.
So to see them being attacked in that manner, it was a complete betrayal because, come on, we had a just cause. We're citizens likewise.
You seem to be on our
no
side.
one has more rights than the other. So why are we being maimed like this? Oh, I really hope that government can come to a resolution very quickly.
What would resolution look like? Actually, let me ask.
First resolution has to do with taking responsibility. Remember, you don't just take responsibility when the going is good. You take responsibility when the going is bad. 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 You take responsibil you must take responsibility even if it goes bad. That is leadership.
Thank you. Maritime operators seek change, port border reforms. Hoodlums in the aftermath of the NSAS protest, like we've just discussed, wreaked a lot of havoc on the maritime sector, from the burning of the seven-story building of the Nigerian Ports Authority headquarters to attacks on the Nigerian Customs Service. There were, the loss has been colossal. It hasn't yet been quantified. However, the maritime operators are now seeking change following this. Please break this down for us, Divo.
Well, still as an extension of the uh, mayhem that sparked off by the last Tuesday's events, the Nigerian Customs Service as well as the Nigerian Ports Authority head office were damaged or vandalized, especially the Ports Authority head office. It was in Apapa. It was burnt to some extent. Okay, and they also vandalized, especially within the seaport, many of the cars and vehicles that were within their own arena. So what happened was, like I said, there was a breakdown that led to the calling of the curfew. Whilst the NSARS protest was taking place prior to that time, some hoodlums within that area took advantage also and started creating roadblocks around the Ports Authority.
Yeah.
Now there was a genuine protest that was already taking place within the Ports Authority by some of the officers, the seaports operators, the what do you call them, the clearing agents, and port workers, requesting for reforms. Okay, because whilst there was a NSARS protest as well, they also mounted some issues that had taken place in them, in the sense that they were also protesting the excessive extortion of government agencies at the ports, all right, of which most people are aware of, that before you clear your goods, you're going to go through many perceived doors of levies and fees, of which many people feel are high-handed. Also, they were protesting the inability of the infrastructure in terms of bad roads, bad governance around that whole operation, which also affected the customs as well. Much is yet to be heard as regards the positions that they will take regarding this, but due to that damage,
Yeah.
and the fear of what would have happened as of that Tuesday, the Ports Authority had to close operations.
Yes.
So the
They've been
seaport
closed for 5
for
days.
5 days now, which, as you know, the Apapa port is the biggest port in the country. Just a day's closure is not just a, a, a complete damage to operations and backlog that already existed, but a loss of revenue and capital to not just the port operators, but the users of the ports too, that which supplies goods and services for businesses and governments around the nation.
All right. Still, some more effects of the past few days. Outrage over IGP's failure to stop looting, cops Sean Adamu's order. As of this morning, some people still reported cases of gunshots being heard in some parts of Lagos. And unfortunately, I don't know how driving here was for you, Divo, the distance you had to drive. There's almost no presence of any uniformed officer. So police, LASMA. So there's a complete breakdown of law and order. Driving has been a nightmare. It's been a free-for-all in many areas because there's no law enforcement agent in these areas. And it begs to question, what then, or is there still respect in terms for the IG's order? The IG ordered last week that all policemen should return back to base, or to back to their stations. However, we haven't seen them. Please take us through the story with the headline from the Punch newspaper: outrage over IGP's failure to stop looting.
Well, it's almost not a surprise as to what is happening, because I think that was on Monday when the IG came out and said that enough was enough. Because right after the outrage that ensued on Wednesday, what we saw was that there was a complete absence of law enforcement of agencies and officers nationwide. Now, remember, they were principally under attack in some of the locations, which is why to restore order in some locations, the military was brought on board. But he did say that he had spoken to all his AIGs information nationwide, and that they should, and he had also ordered police officers that were on private duty to resume back at force headquarters, of which many said it didn't happen. But generally, the police was trying to restore law and order. Now, what we've seen is that it's been sporadic in its effectiveness. In many locations, we have not seen them. Okay. Yes, here in Lagos, some locations do have the presence of police officers, while some don't. In Abuja, same thing. As you saw when they attempted to loot the perceived COVID-19 warehouse in Abuja, it took the presence of law enforcement in some locations to be able to foil it, whilst the looters looked for other locations to try and siege on, besiege on. So whilst and also don't want to there may be a connection also with the judicial panels taking place in many of the state governments instituted by the governors to resolve some of the issues that have taken place, some of the claims that have been made, allegations as to brutality and abuse of power by SARS. This, for the first time, may put police officers, might create some level of tension. And because remember, prior to this time, it seemed as if there was simply no check.
So do I have a question? What's the solution then? Because a number of people have said, of course, like the tension you've mentioned, it's not it's we're not going to be creating it, it's already there. And a number of policemen, officers have expressed a fear for their lives being on the streets, looking at the things that have happened to their colleagues. A number of them do not want to be seen in uniform. Even those who have been attached to private residences have taken on, their mufti. How then do we solve this issue of the people against the police, or this perception of the people against the police?
Well, I'll start from the president's first statement when he reacted, when he said that police officers who lost their lives on account of these protests justice would be given to them, Now, the truth is, police officers are citizens likewise. They're just doing a job that they have been given. So their fears are germane. However, what was left as a crack, meaning the abuse by some of them, but by extrajudiciary incidences left unprosecuted or unreviewed, has led to the breakdown of trust, that the people have with their own law enforcement. So definitely, in spite of the police is your friend, there are so many cases, and that's what led to the NSAR's uproar, that the police is not your friend. We can give you case upon case upon case upon case, whereby instead of respecting and working with law enforcement, they have become more criminal to us than even the terrorists themselves. So this confusion is what government, and this is where the integrity, the sincerity of purpose comes to play. Maybe it didn't happen before now, but government needs to begin to show, and this was also the tension that led to the NSAR's protesters refusing to back down on their protests, because they hadn't seen in their own view what do we call it?
So despite the fact that the government has
justifiable,
said
concrete action,
SARS,
on behalf of government, because many times, 4 times before, SARS had been disbanded and only renamed. In this instance, they even renamed it again. So the question is, why should I believe you now if
we
you
have
play
to
the
build
same?
trust. For this to happen, we have to build trust.
Yes, government needs to build that trust back.
Right.
Take, for example, in Anambra State, the former chief SARS head there was an elected official, an appointed official in government, though the governor sacked him as a response to the protesters. But does that address the wrongdoings that have been alleged? Do you understand?
So justice and fairness.
Justice must be done at the end of the day. Now, what happens is that when people lose trust, when there's a breakdown of law and order, in restoring that concept of law and order, government must be seen, not just heard, seen as carrying out justice on all sides. And when I say on all sides, For those currently, as you know, in some of the
Mm.
stories, arsonists are being rounded up,
All right.
as well as police officers who hopefully at the end of the judicial panels, uh, many Nigerians will see justice carried
We're
out.
almost out of time, and I have some stories I want us to
Okay.
definitely get into. I want us to touch on Fagba's story and the social media bill,
Right.
even if we're not able to go through everything. But I have Yinka saying that I live in the Adekunle axis of Yaba near the Panti police station, and since last week Wednesday, we still hear gunshots in the day and night. The Panti police station axis of Herbert Macaulay is a no-go area. God save us all. While Sanwo-Olu sounds tough over intertribal clashes in Lagos, this headline from the Punch newspaper. The governor, during an assessment tour of the area yesterday, Tuesday, vowed to deal decisively with those involved in intertribal clashes. For those who live in Fagba, Ifako, Ijaye area, there's been they've bemoaned
There was mayhem.
mayhem. I'm trying to look for a word even deeper than mayhem from the reports we've heard from eyewitness residents living in Fair, and it's been tracked to being a clash between the Yoruba and the Hausa
Yes.
people in that area. Please just very quickly touch on this.
Well, basically, the governor, on his inspection and seeing that the ultimate destruction that took place in that area, you try to wonder, was this all about NSARS? However, we do have from various sources that there was a little fracas that ensued from an already fault line that existed within the Fagba area between the two tribes there, all right? I think it was a truck driver and some of the traders, which led to burnings and fighting between the two parties, all right? So at the end of the day, they literally war enraged in that little zone, okay? Now, many in calling the government into the matter did say that that area was already a beehive of miscreants and hoodlums. And the governor, in a strong statement to them, did say that for those who have not, that they should identify themselves, all right, up front, so that they can confirm those who are legitimate and those who are hoodlums or just wanderers, or those who have no identity, because the government was coming to clear the area. Yes, it might be a little too late, because the truth is the destruction has taken place. But the quicker
Loss of
it's taken, the better. And I must say this: I don't envy the governor at this point in time, because Lagos is not a small city. All right, Lagos has over 20 million people. Lagos is the most diverse city within Africa. However, with these 20 million people, that is why you're given the organs of government. And that's why I always scream on government that, listen, it can't always be about the governor.
Yes.
The whole idea is that a governor has a whole organ of parastatus, ministries, commissions, agencies working to ensure that these issues that affect our daily lives on various issues are addressed on time before they break down into the mayhem that we're seeing. So they're preventable. So I hope government acts up, gets the act together to be able to address these issues. Fagba is not the only area that has this problem. There are many other areas that miscreants.
So we should learn from what happened in Fagba and not allow it to happen in other areas.
Yes. And
so Obina from Fagba says, I live quite close to Fagba. The miscreants insisted on having a cow before the truck could pass, and that triggered the fracas. So in a volatile area like that, a little seemingly little incident could cause the mayhem that we've seen today.
Of course.
He says the two tribes have been living in peace thus far. Well, federal government
Were
insists,
they actually?
Yeah, well,
I doubt that.
Same here. If a little incident like that could lead to that. Very quickly, we have less than a minute. Federal government insists on regulating social media despite public outcry. The federal government yesterday launched a fresh campaign to regulate social media, especially in the wake of the NSAS protests that were largely driven by digital campaigns. Leading the charge is Minister of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed. He says they feel compelled to regulate social media to curb the spread of what he calls fake news. Well, we're back again with fake news.
Yes, what he did say was that it's almost like he feels that he's justified in his campaign, because prior to this time, he said when he instituted the campaign by visiting media houses, etc., channels of communication to get them to understand why the social media bill needed to have been brought to book. He said he was rebuffed, he was laughed at, he was mocked, he was thrown out. However, from this crisis that's taking place. He said only with fake news only, without a bullet, a whole war and destruction would take place. Now there is fairness to his statements because it's true that social media is volatile. However, I think what is being pushed against from the side of the masses is that whilst fake social media is an independent source of information, uh, government needs to more or less do a full stakeholder engagement with the public to be able to understand how and to come to an agreement as to how regulation in this area needs to be carried out, okay? Because it's not just for government to the people. It's something that we all need to work with
Someone
together.
said something, Divo, that one of the ways we can tackle fake news is if we are actually fed with authentic news
some
on
said
time.
that the government can, yes.
If we don't get
You
information,
see, unfortunately, this is where the credibility is being tested. Most times, like even in this case, both Lagos State government and the army or reversals of information. It didn't start here. There are many instances where government has said one thing, they do another, or they say one thing, and in a little short while they reverse it. We've seen this back and forth. So, like I said, these actions have led to the erosion of credibility that the people have with their government. But hopefully, if he can successfully engage the public nationwide on this matter, I think he can come to some kind of understanding and agreement as to the type and nature of regulation that should be adopted within
That's a
Nigeria.
big debate. Should and how, if yes, should social media be regulated in Nigeria?
Well,
we can't go into
that's
it.
why I say
We can't
nature.
go into, we
But
can't
there
go
has
into
to be
it.
some form of governance
All right.
to ensure that whatever happens there.
That would be a great debate, and I'll call you for that, Divo. You can find Divo at Divo Okore on Twitter and find us at Smooth981FM. Perhaps you want to start that debate. We can use the hashtag freshlypressed981. Should social media be regulated in Nigeria? If you say yes, how do you think it ought to be regulated? If you say no, defend your response. Well, at 9 o'clock, join us for a conversation with the pioneer Director General of the National Broadcasting Commission, Dr. Tom Adaba, as well as media practitioner, Mr. Onimisi Adaba. We'll be speaking about the NBC regulation, equity, fairness, and maybe we might touch on this social media regulation. Do join us at 9 o'clock. Before then, the Locker Room 981 with Tega will kick off at 8:15. This is Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life.
The headlines.
Thank you, Divo.
Yeah. So how long will you be here?
Oh, I'll be here till it's just early mornings that
Affairs.
Thank you all for watching.